Thank you for joining us on this edition of Diaspora Glitch Podcast. We're still on the homemaking series. And today we're happy to have Gabriel. Gabriel is a first generation immigrant and also US national with a Nigerian roots. Gabriel, this is Diaspora Glitch, where home is a patchwork of places. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Joseph, for having me. It's a pleasure, and I look forward to an exciting conversation with you.
Thank you very much. So, Gabriel, when I look at your profile, you've built a career around reducing risk, system strengthening, and helping organizations operate with greater clarity and control. We are exploring what happens when that strategic mindset meets something far more personal, such as migration, identity, and homemaking in a foreign soil across borders. So let's start at the very beginning. Gabriel, what was growing up like? Take us back to your early years. Where did you grow up? What did home mean to you there?
Thank you, Joseph. So, growing up, what a home means for me is a place of safety, a place of refuge, a place of calm, a place where you are at your best, goofy self. That is what it reminds me of. And growing up, I was born in a village called Ivwe in Uromi, Edo State. Edo State is the southern part of Nigeria. And I have about a few siblings before me. I'm in the middle. I have two younger ones. So that means I have my siblings who've already kind of, set the ground, the play and all of that, for
Yeah,
me. And it was fun. I remember my cousins were also very close by. From my father's side, from my uncle. He lives close by, and we will go,
yeah,
age mate and all of that. So you can imagine how that communal feeling
I
was.
can imagine.
So it was actually very, very fun growing up and all of that. So, but what that built into me is curiosity, just having that childlike, curiosity to want to test the water,
Yeah,
want to test, the temperature, want to try something. So yeah, that is actually what it built in me, that curiosity,
yeah,
and that is what home feels like for me.
yeah. And thank you for letting us into your early words. And speaking around the idea of um system thinking. Were you always this structured person, system thinking person, strategic thinking, or did that develop over the years due to challenges that you may have encountered growing up? You know, where did this whole strategic system thinking, system optimization, all of this, where did it all come from?
I would say from same, that curiosity to just understand how things work around me. I think one of the good traits I would say I have is being able to read my environment and be able to adapt easily. And that, all of that from that, kind of strengthened that curiosity, so to speak, over the years. And
Yeah,
then you go into a place now, the first thing you want to intuitively check out is how is the system working here?
yeah,
How do the things functioning,
yeah,
and how what is the grand scheme of work, so to speak,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
as an individual, and then kind of leverage on that information to see how you fit in, and
yeah.
if you finally get to a point where you don't fit in, then you find a way around it strategically.
Yeah. Speaking about finding a way around things, I'm curious. Before relocation, was it ever on the table the idea to move away from your home country? Did you already feel globally oriented, or was your vision originally rooted in one place?
No, I've always been global. For me, I even why I was in Nigeria when I didn't even know what a passport was as at that time. I was very young, and when people say I have my international passport, I'm like, what does that even mean? I would think it's just that two by two you go to the studio and take and all of that. So even with that limited mindset around what it takes to go out, I have always had this, there's something out there mindset.
Yeah,
um, and I've always wanted, and I've always, told myself that I would go out there. I would specifically say the US. I would specifically say Australia. I never said any other country. growing up.
So so
And
so for you,
yeah,
it was really clear where you wanted to go to. You know.
Yes, it was really clear for me. It was
Yeah,
clear
yeah,
for me for two reasons. One, I went to Uniport. I went to the University of Port Harcourt in Rivers State, Nigeria. And before then, I've always known that is better. There's something better, right? So even while I was at the University of Port Harcourt, I remember one conversation that I had with my sister. Not that I had a conversation directly with her, but it was just me manifesting and speaking
yeah.
things that I will, say where I will usually do. And then I did mention I wasn't particularly happy when I returned from school that day, and then I say I remember vividly. I said once I am done with this bachelor's, I'm not going to do my masters in Nigeria. No matter how good the school is, I'm not going to do my masters in Nigeria. I'm going to
Yeah,
go to the US. And when I said that, she kind of looked at me funny because obviously everything around me doesn't really speak to
supports the idea of
so
having
yeah,
a master's in the
I've always
US.
had that mindset. Yeah,
So I mean, I'm going to come back to this, but first let's dig deep a bit about you professionally. A quick look up on your profile, says things. You built director level experience in procurement and supply chain, sourcing strategy, vendor optimization, contract negotiation. Gabriel, this requires precision and composure. What does it take to operate at the level of consistency that you're operating now? As an immigrant who is doing very well in Trump's United States.
because United States. Yeah, how does it really? What does it take to operate at this level? First thing first, I'm a very curious person. I want to know. I want to know what I don't know, and I'm not afraid to admit that I don't know something. But I'm going to tell you what I do is I will say, hey, I don't fully understand this yet. Give me a day or two and I will come back with the result. I'll come back with the understanding. And truly, I will go back to my drawing board, go back to the study room, figure it out and come back. So always want to learn,
Yeah,
I always, wanted to learn. And also what it takes to operate at this level is knowing what no longer works. I would say 7 years ago, nobody could tell what the 2020 will bring, for example. And when 2020 came, it came with all of its challenges as well as its opportunities.
yeah.
And then businesses have to evolve and learn how to still operate while remote.
I also just saw something about you. You are the founder of SIG Procurement Solutions. Was there a defining career moment where you realized you were like an executive? You did mention a few seconds ago knowing when something no longer works. What made you step out and build your own firm? Why fractional leadership? What gap were you solving? In many ways, procurement is about strengthening ecosystem. Did that system mindset shape how you later approach your new adventure?
Absolutely. Talking about that new adventure is an idea of mine. It's still very at its infancy stage. And the goal for that is to, I recently moved into a different state and different city, obviously different from Boston where I, lived
Yeah,
close over a decade. And I see a lot of challenges around me, and I see a whole lot of struggles, with sourcing and procurement around the supply chain area. And I have the experience, and I have the
yeah,
know-how, and I have the connection, so to speak,
yeah,
with suppliers. I've been able to build that relationship with the suppliers and that I've worked with over the years across several industries,
yeah,
right? Manufacturing to uh, hospitality. I've worked across several industries, and I have built a whole community, around me
yeah,
over the years. And I see that I can, step in here and be of service. The mindset
yeah,
behind that is actually to serve, you know, to offer solution, to make things easy, to make life
yeah,
easier, right? That is the whole idea about that. And also, it's kind of, I'm very curious of my environment.
yeah.
And when I step into a new place, I want to see what is working, what is not working, and
Mm,
if I find something that is not working, how can we make it work better? And I think it's just that mindset that has actually pushed me thus far. and I continuously leverage on that. I did mention finding what is no longer working.
Yeah,
You can have your old tools that has obviously embraced technology and new advancement and all of that. It doesn't necessarily mean those old tools are no longer working, but the way those tools function now in this new environment has changed.
yeah,
You, as the person who kind of navigates around the use of those tools, have to also navigate around how to take opportunity, hold on to that opportunity that this
yeah,
new technology has provided, and be able to fine tune your tools and be able to use it, right?
yeah,
At some point, you get to a point where you now also have to say, okay, this tool is completely no longer working at all. You have to put it aside and learn new things. So all of that, being able to navigate through all of that
yeah.
is key to taking advantage and for good anyway of opportunities around you.
Yeah, it's nice to hear this kind of stories coming from, internationals, for example, where some leaders believe um immigrants don't contribute meaningfully to the economic development of for a country. To see that you are making a difference in the procurement and supply chain industry sounds very, reassuring. But I need to come back to what you were trying to say earlier. Diaspora stories are rarely just about opportunities. They are often about pressure. At what point did you consider seriously relocating? You did mention, during your bachelor's, you had some conversation with your aunt, related to moving. What was it about the country, Nigeria, that you saw there that motivated that desire? Was it just about the adventure, wanting to um see what life is all about on the other side? What was it about the country that motivated this? What did you see? What did you notice?
A whole lot of things have actually changed. I left Nigeria just right after I came back from my national youth service. I was posted when I finished that. And my first trip outside of Nigeria, I went to the UAE. I was in Dubai for a visit and also to see what opportunities are out there. So while I was in Dubai, I kind of sensed a couple of changes. I saw the difference, right? That was part of the motivation. My motivation was also to learn more. I want to be better. I'm
Yeah,
always hungry for better,
yeah.
and that was my key motivation. So talking about the country, then a whole lot has changed over the years. I mean, Nigeria, if it wasn't this bad as at that time there was really nothing that wasn't working for me that made me take that decision.
Yeah, but did you see your future in the country?
No, I didn't. Like I
Ah,
mentioned, I've always,
so what was it about governance structure, leadership that made you felt this place will no longer represent where I want to stay to pursue postgraduate
yes, yes.
studies?
Yeah, it's the system, the educational system. Most importantly, I felt I deserved better as a person, as at that time, and how I will get that better wasn't readily available with what I see
So was it that the university wasn't giving you enough, or
yes.
the institutions around the
The
university wasn't?
institutions wasn't giving me enough, and I wasn't really satisfied with what I was, because I know that I have a whole lot inside of me that
Yeah,
I want to
huh?
explore intellectually,
Yeah,
and I need an environment that will stimulate me well enough to be able to really come out and be able to function. I wasn't even looking at it from the opportunity standpoint as at the time I made the decision. I was just basically looking at it from the educational standpoint, so to speak, and say,
yeah,
hey,
just to improve yourself
yes, I just want to improve
intellectually.
myself intellectually. I wanted to have more opportunity, intellectual opportunity, so to speak, and
I
that was the motivating factor,
Yeah,
actually.
speaking about this intellectual adventure, so many people will be thinking, oh, probably Gabriel had a scholarship. Did you have to pay a price for this advanced and improved learning? Or was it a scholarship? Did you pay any other price? Because I'm curious because the way you see you put it, I needed to have. I just knew that I was not going to do my MSc in Nigeria, so it looks as if it's just very easy for someone to dream and achieve it.
I didn't have any scholarship. As a matter of fact,
So you paid for this.
I paid I paid everything, every penny. I went to a private university here in the US. I went to a school in Boston, and for those who really kind of know Boston, not even Boston, Massachusetts as a city is expensive. It's one of the most expensive states to live
Yeah,
in the US. And then the school where I did my program, it was a private university. As at the time I was applying, I did apply to that school. I applied to a couple of schools in California, Wisconsin, and Oklahoma. When I got accepted in all of these schools, but when I eventually made a decision to select one school, I picked Boston.
yeah.
I didn't know what I was. Yeah,
Boston is expensive
it is
just to
expensive. I didn't.
just to live.
Yeah, I didn't know. As at that time, I didn't know how expensive it's going to be living in Boston. But I also do know how expensive it's going to be to be able to pay and all of that. And also, I
Yeah.
was coming in as an international student. But one thing I have going for me is just belief. It's just that faith, that leap of faith.
Hmm.
As a matter of fact, when I came here, when I got the admission and all of that, I didn't have the money to pay for all of that fee. For some reason, I got here. When I landed in Boston, I had $40. I didn't know anyone in the US before I came here. I didn't know anyone in Boston. I didn't even have an accommodation, but I had the admission and that was all I needed. And I got accepted. And when I went to the interview, the visa interview, I was given the visa, right? But then the money wasn't there. I remember what actually happened was, not to go into detail, but as at the time I landed in Boston, I had $40. And to come out of the airport to Heinz Convention Center in Boston, I had to pay $5. I had to get a ticket, $5, the bus ticket that would take me from the airport to Boston. And as at the time I landed my 2 feet in Boston, I had $35. I didn't have anywhere to live. I didn't even have the thousands of dollars to pay for this tuition. I didn't know anybody, but I had a will. And whenever there's a will, there's
There's a
always going
way.
to be a way,
Yeah,
right?
I've heard that.
So I didn't have that privilege of of getting a scholarship. I didn't know where I could get scholarship, and I was in the land where I don't know anyone, obviously, and I suffered. That's just the plain truth.
That's let's
Yeah,
just keep it
let's
that
let's
way.
be real. I suffered. How did I pay to go deep into it? I did everything that I had to do to legitimately. First thing first, I the only way you can really legitimately work in the US is when you have your social security number. And as a student in the US, you are restricted. When they give you before you even get access to have a social security number as a student, an international student, you would have to have an on-campus job who is ready to sponsor you, who is ready to employ you within the campus, because that's your restriction. You're only restricted to work within the campus for 20 hours, up to 20 hours, not
Yeah,
outside. I don't know, maybe the rules have changed now. To be honest, it wasn't easy.
yeah,
I didn't have any scholarship. I had to work and work and work. Sometimes I would, if I had to go into that story.
yeah. Perhaps we can have it on a special edition. But I like to come back home because the last guest did mention some things about political instability, serving as a motivating factor to leave South Africa, And now with your story, when you look back at the time you left Nigeria and now, would you say politically, leadership wise, governance has improved?
For me, it's actually worse. It's worse now than it was 10, 11, 12 years ago.
So, as someone trained to assess operational risk in organizations, did you start to see national instability as a form of personal or professional risk?
I would say yes. I would say that if the playing field is not level enough, so to speak,
Yeah,
it's difficult, right? And when you constantly have policies in place, or especially people in positions of power, or that honestly really don't care about making policies that will better the life of the people, then what have we
yeah,
not? You know, It's harder now. If I was every time I visit, I see a whole lot has changed from the last time I visited.
So
Right.
you think relocating it feels like an escape, reinvention, or risk mitigation,
If I was
despite the challenges you had faced over the years?
Yeah, if I was staying in Nigeria right now in this time and age, I probably would want to relocate. It would have been different for me. Right now, when I moved here, it was just mostly educational, to be honest. I wanted more out of what I think I can do and be. If I was still in Nigeria right now, I will be moving for survival. So it's different right now.
So you think where you are professionally,
Yeah.
you would not have been there
Oh,
if you
obviously
were
not.
in Nigeria.
No, no, absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not. The Gabriel I know today probably would have still be the same Gabriel, but I probably would have been in a different situation.
So if
Whatever
we
that
are,
situation is, I wouldn't know, but
yeah.
I would definitely say it would not have opened me up to the opportunities that I have now, that I'm exploring now, and it would not have opened me up to who I'm constantly evolving into.
So let's talk about the role of citizens to help make their home countries better. So using Nigeria as a case study. I mean, since you have Nigerian roots, do you think the citizens, passiveness is also enabling this kind of bad leadership, which in turn makes the country uncomfortable for people to stay?
So I will approach this on two fronts. Like first, we do have a situation where the people have been oppressed to the point where
They see oppression as a norm.
it's a status quo, right? And then we get to a place where we also see ourselves in a situation where everybody can clamor from the sideline, and then when in fact what they are clamoring for is an opportunity to even do worse than the people they are agitating against. With the boys movement or whatever, I tend not to really follow news from Nigeria, not because I want to kind of seclude myself from all of that, but because I have a whole lot of other stuff that are going well for me that I'm
Yeah,
kind of focusing on. So I tend to limit my involvement with Nigerian politics and news thereof. My family is still in Nigeria. My family lives there, right? So I still have that affiliation that, what affects the eyes affects the nose kind of situation, right?
yeah,
However, with the whole political landscape and seeing who and who is actually being associated with, the city boys and all of that, and kind of piggyback to back rather to what they've said in the past and the things they said they stood for is contradictory in the sense that what we see now is different from what we are seeing now, rather, is different from what they said is a couple of years back. And that also brings me to the first point that I made earlier that whoever is clamoring on the side and all of that is basically just clamoring to have an opportunity to be part of the same people or the same group that, and be part of the doom. And then again, talking about the people and not revolution, talking about the people and coming out in protest and all of that, you also have to look at the track record. Look at what happened in Lekki, for example.
yeah,
People came out en masse. This, tried to speak their mind and all of that. Many people were killed, and at least up to the time, the government denied that nobody was
yeah,
injured. It was just all and all that. Until years after that, in Lagos, for example, we're not talking about mass burial, So situations like that where you have people come out in the past and protest and all of that, and some have been exiled, the likes of DJ, what's her name again? DJ Switch
yeah.
and all
Did
of
you
that.
switch?
A whole lot of people, were now targeted, specifically because of their how they were involved in the, in all of that. So the people has actually been oppressed to the point where they've been forced to remain silent.
So more like a Stockholm syndrome, where
Exactly.
you
You
begin
know,
to admire the oppressed.
exactly.
The
Right now, we do have an election coming up. Just to kind of speak a little bit about that, we do have an election coming up, which is an
yeah,
opportunity to now sit back and say, hey, you know what? As a people, how do we make our votes count? How do we make sure that whoever we feel is qualified enough that actually have the need and the desires of the people at
yeah,
heart gets the opportunity to make the changes that is really
yeah.
but we don't have a system that really supports that. And even even what is left of that foundation is gradually being peeled off with the new policy that they sign it with the new sign into law. So is there really hope?
Well, that would be for the citizens to answer. I would think that if there's a city boy movement, maybe the people can also have the people movement. There's also some quarters, some sections, in the internet, they're also promoting the village boy movement. But I would rather, support a movement that is championed by the people, because in the end, they are the one that will make these choices. And you talked about killing in different in Lekki, for example, in the end SARS protest. But this same using violent means to stop protesters is also happening, for example, in the US, it happens in Morocco, it happened in Kenya, it also happened in Senegal. And in fact, the current president has been in jail, and the people clamored. The changes still occurs in these countries. So what is making the difference in these countries that is not making the difference in Nigeria? Why are they succeeding in why are people voices counting in Kenya, counting in Senegal, counting in Morocco? These are all African countries with the same kind of political mindset among the ruling class. But why are there some significant progresses and changes in these other countries? And Nigeria, supposedly giant of Africa, struggling to effect that kind of change.
It's the mindset, and I will say why I would say the mind. We do have a population, not generalizing,
Yeah,
that they point fingers and say, "Hey, I don't think this person is doing the best they can for the country. They're good, they're bad, they're this,
yeah,
right?" What they are saying in essence is, "Give me the opportunity to be worse than that person." Because we've seen it happen. There were certain governors in Nigeria, for example, who were leading forces, growing up, back in those days, Nigerian Labour Congress and all of
yeah,
that. And then they had the opportunity to actually effect the changes that they were actually championing when they were at
yeah,
low. And then what do we have in our hands, right? We have people now, these same men, come out and call whites green. And you wonder, so when this person was actually leading this, platform and shouting and really kind of, pushing for change, he
yeah,
was actually looking for an opportunity to be part of the cabal, so to speak, to be part of the,
yeah,
and now he's singing a different tune. It's the same with an average Nigerian. It's the same mindset. So you see people who have, I was discussing with my friend the other day, and an average Nigerian is the problem with Nigeria. So not until we change our mindset that when you go into a public space,
yeah,
especially either through election or through whichever means, your first goal should be to serve. Look around you. What are those immediate things that needs to change?
yeah,
You are there to champion those changes. But then we also have situations where people with good intentions actually get to these positions. You cannot run a team, a department all by yourself. And then you have people who are constantly sabotaging your
yeah.
efforts, right?
Now, but
So
when you make this argument, does it also suggest that even when good leaders are elected, for example, a section of Nigerians believe that certain candidates will be the messiah or will play the rescue mission. So with this remark you have made now, with this observation, does it also mean that even when these candidates get there, I mean, these supposedly candidates with good intention, they will still fail?
no, the thing is, I have known you for years. For example, I can vouch for your character, right?
Yeah,
If by tomorrow I see you in a place and I want to assume vice versa,
yeah,
right? If at the end of the day I see you in a position of clamoring for a position of change, to understand I could tell, okay, Joseph is doing this for this, and this is
yeah,
why he's doing this.
yeah,
And then you also have a couple of people who you can actually bet on on their integrity and their character. And then you surround yourself with those people. Change will come, right?
so
So it's not a total, it's not a hopeless situation,
yeah,
but we have to have a change of mindset. We have to start thinking differently as Nigerians, because Nigeria cannot exist without Nigerians. We have to start thinking differently. We have to start thinking of service rather
than benefits.
than benefit. We have to start thinking of the other person other than ourselves most of the time. We have leaders now who only think about themselves, their family, what is next for grabs, at the detriment of what they should be, of the people and the
They
society.
just think about the next election cycle,
Exactly.
the next 4 years, for example, as they say in
Yeah.
Nigeria.
And then we also have to be able to hold people accountable. Look at what is happening in Japan, for example, right?
Also in South Korea,
Also in South Korea, also in China. If you are a public elected officer, and then at the end of the day, your track record, you get. So if we know that at the end of the day, we are going to,
you can be jailed.
exactly. So it has to be first, we have a whole lot of sensitization to do as a country. An average Nigerian now thinks, okay, fine, I don't necessarily have to work. I just only have to get one opportunity. I don't necessarily have to, bother going to school or learning new skills or whatever. Someone, somewhere, somehow, is going to be
To come to my
responsible for me,
rescue.
to my rescue. All of this just didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
So first of all, we have to go back to, sensitization. We have to go back to, cleaning the mindset of, of the youth, especially, because none of this would happen if the oppressed, most of the time we have people who are used to oppress the oppressed, selected from the oppressed. So even the oppressed people are the tools the oppressor
Use.
used to oppress the oppressed.
Yeah. Yeah. This makes a whole lot of sense. I
So the
mean,
cycle continues. So it's all about mindset. We have to go back to sensitization. We have to go back to cleaning the mindset of an average.
and do you think diaspora citizens, have a role to play? What role do you think they can play from a distance? I
From a
mean,
distance, we can.
what is practically possible?
What is practically possible is, speaking from my standpoint, what is practically possible is to kind of try to discourage this enabling mentality. Because most of the time we enable people to be lazy, to kind of substitute hard work
For
for
like this entitled
exactly.
mindset.
And again, we see how the system works. We see how A relates to B and B relates to C, and how the entire cycle evolves.
Continuous.
And then, birth whatever change or whatever. We can actually copy that and replicate same. But again, if at the point of you replicating that, the people with whom you want to, establish that initiative are not fully involved, it takes a village, they say, to raise a kid, to raise a child. So it also takes a village to birth an initiative and to see it come to fruition.
Yeah.
And yes, we do have a lot to offer, but at the same time, the people with whom we want to work with
Are the ones that will make the call.
exactly are the ones that will make the call.
Okay. I mean, let's put a stop on Nigeria for now. Let's come back to where you are. Once you relocate, the theory becomes reality. What were the emotional and practical realities of starting over? I mean, you basically started your life over. How do you build trust and credibility in a new environment? I mean, these are some of the questions someone watching may want to know. For example, you live in a place that is very highly challenging, full of competitions. As an immigrant, how do you emotionally and physically start your life over in a foreign zone using your experiences?
First of all, you have to, like I said, it still goes back to those, the four-letter words that I said earlier, grit, GROIT. And grit doesn't really work if you kind of subservient to the things that you have to do as a human being. For me, it's mostly around knowing the terrain has changed.
Yeah,
For me, the terrain has changed. So for me, when I moved here, everything changed. Everything is different. I see more people that are, that don't have the same mindset, that don't have the same background, the same upbringing. I'm in a new
yeah,
land. I'm in a new environment. The weather is different. The food, is different. For the first 6 months of my living in the US, I was a pasta boy.
Yeah.
I'll go to the store, and the only thing that I can, that looks familiar is pasta. I did, and so you have to find a way to gradually adapt. You have to find a way to gradually adapt, and eventually.
And speaking about adaptation, how has your definition of home evolved? In the beginning, you know, you did mention it was about, where you find safety. So with your experiences now, would you say your idea of home has evolved? Is it geography? Is it stability? Is it the ability to operate with confidence and control? How would you define homemaking?
For me, I would say it's been more of a whole lot has changed for me personally over the past 2 years, right?
So which is more central to your evolving? Would you say it's geography? Moving from one geographical location in the global south to another location in the global north. Would you say is stability? Which is more central to you when the idea of home is mentioned to you?
Your value as a human being, everyone has his value. So your value is more central. It is the foundation that everything is rests on, right? So wherever you go as an individual, whether you live in a different climate, a different weather, region, or a different, it is your value
Mm,
that. So that is the foundation. So even now that I am in a different location, nothing has actually changed in terms of environment. It's the same look and feel of things, the same language, obviously, the same way people speak, the same way people act, the same way people think, across these two states or other, 48 states,
mhm.
yet to explore. Traveled, to how many, within the United States, I've basically almost, traveled to the end, to more than half of the states.
Yeah.
It's the same way people speak and think and all of that. There could be some language, accent and all of those things, but it's the same mentality.
So for
But
you,
what home feels for me, whether I see myself in Boston, or I see myself in Texas or Dallas, or I see myself in Tennessee, what home feels for me is the value that I have personally, that I bring into that environment in trying to create what
yeah.
I see and on me.
So what you are saying, if I have to paraphrase, is regardless of where you are, whether you are in Philippines or you are in France, if you are a person of no value, you cannot find a home anywhere.
Not really. You can find a home, but how your home? See, we define home based on, what matters to you. For example, might necessarily not matter to me. What gets your interest might not get my interest, and the reason why that is because of what we value.
Yeah, variety is a spice of life, they said.
Exactly. So you might still, yeah, you can still feel at home. You can still feel at home in your
So it
in
is the value with which you bring into an environment that helps you to make a home there, not
yes.
actually moving from point A to point B. But when you move
No.
without,
Yeah.
if I understand correctly, if you move without value, you will still have the desire to keep moving.
Yeah, you can change the environment, but the environment really cannot change you. So whether you live in Nigeria, or you live in the UK, or you live in the US or Australia, Australia can only change you to the point with which you want to be changed,
I see.
right? And the same goes with value. That's what I mean. So when you come into a new place, for
Yeah,
example, for me,
yeah,
there are other things that I could, we're talking about homemaking now. There are other things that I can bring into,
yeah,
my home and all of that. But what triggers the desire to pick those things and bring them into my home, for example,
yeah,
is my value. If it doesn't really, if it doesn't count
yeah,
and doesn't have any grounding within my assessment of what should, I probably wouldn't even pay attention to it, let alone
yeah.
bringing in and trying to figure it out. Yeah.
I mean, Gabriel, your story sits at the intersection of strategy and survival, precision and reinvention. If home is a patchwork of places, I mean, what piece of that patchwork feels most defining for you right now?
What is more defining for me right now is just seeing how much the world around me is changing, and at the same time not feel too overwhelmed with what I see, with the level of changes I see, and having the stability of mind to stay the course
Yeah,
and to continue to find a way out and to continue to uh, leverage on what I already have and what I already know, and being able to channel all the energy into just being present with what I do part time.
Yeah.
Because if I'm pursuing this, I'm pursuing that and that and that, at the end of the day, I will lose myself, I'll lose my core.
Yeah.
But if I'm stable enough, knowing the changes that are happening around me, exploring ways that I can positively, use those changes to my advantage
Yeah.
without losing myself, that is in this time and in this, in this moment,
Yeah.
that is actually what gives me that sense of peace.
Well, this has been an inspiring session with you, Gabriel. And on a final note, is there a question about your journey you wish more people would ask?
Yeah.
If this were to be a live session, what do you think people will be asking about your journey now? And how would you answer that?
I think people will want to know, how I got to where I am now and what am I doing now to get to the next phase of my life. And what I would want them to know is I didn't have it easy. I didn't have it easy. I didn't have it, offered on a platter. I didn't have any sponsor anywhere. That everything that I have been through, all the struggles, everything is actually what, positively led me to where I am now. Right.
Yeah.
And that if you
So,
are
so,
willing,
so brick by brick, you laid the foundation of where you are.
yes, brick by brick, yes. And if you're willing to roll off your sleeve and have the mentality that, hey, I'm doing the right thing, I want the best out of life and stay focused, there's actually nothing that can stop you. The only obstacle to you achieving everything that you set out to do is you. And most importantly, you keep your hands clean. Keep your hand clean, stay focused, run your race, stay in your lane, and build. And the good thing about the Western world, especially in the US, is even if you live in the valley and you are good at what you do, people will find you. And that is just it. So you don't have to be a nurse, you don't have to be a medical doctor, you don't have to be an engineer, you don't have to be all of those traditional stuff. I've seen people move to the US and they were in accounting in Nigeria, for example, and then all of a sudden, in the next 2 weeks, they're starting a nursing school. First thing first, are you there to serve? Obviously not, because I can tell that you are not coming into this profession to serve. You're coming
Yeah.
into this profession because you think, okay, that is your easy way out of, easy way to make money. No,
Yeah.
you can still be who you are. I've never left the supply chain feed for, the number of years that I've been on. From my first job to this point, I've always been within the supply chain feed. But have I evolved? Yes. Have I grown? Yes. Tomorrow, will I now say, okay, fine, I want to be a medical doctor, for example? Where is that coming from? So you have to be able to find your lane, especially in the Western world, especially in the US. Most, even if you are in the valley and you are good at what you do,
Yeah.
people will find you. Opportunities
Mm.
will find you. So you are who you are for a reason. You don't necessarily have to be a copy
Yeah.
in order to exist.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to speak with you, Deborah. Your story resonates with a Nigerian adage which says, "It is not how kola nut sounds in the ear that it tastes in the mouth." The idea of diaspora lives moving abroad, it sounds very interesting in the ear, but
Yeah,
obviously that is not how it tastes in reality. Thank you for sharing
absolutely.
your story, and we
Thank
hope
you
that
for having
viewers
me.
will draw a lot of inspiration from this.
And
Thank you
also,
for being
there
here
is a
today.
couple, there are a couple of things we didn't dive into
Yeah,
personally, and I'm always here to share.
sure, sure.
I really want to share not necessarily share my story. I want to serve, and every opportunity I get to do that, either by having an interaction with my very dear friend, or at the grocery store, or whoever,
Yeah,
or interacting with someone who had just moved
yeah,
into the US, for example. I always want to
yeah,
share, and the reason why that is important is so people can also learn from you, and know that it is actually, certain things are actually possible. You don't necessarily
yeah,
have to know the entire event, how it's going to unfold before you take the first step. That
yeah,
you can actually take the first step and the second step and the third step without actually knowing how you're doing all of that. But you have a destination. and you keep taking that little step and all of that, right? So it's really a pleasure, to be on this platform. I thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Gabriel, for being here today. And we'll sure find another opportunity to have this kind of conversation and inspire people out there through our story.
Thank you, Joseph. Yeah.